Welcome to the Make It Happen podcast, where we interview cool people doing cool things. This is created and produced by Mike Vanderpool, and I'm Vince Croci, his special projects co-host. We're working on a special project right now, talking to people that have a lot to do with the Toledo area, looking at economic investment and stimulus to create new jobs and enhance the ones that are here, and also striving to create a vibrancy in the community for the people that live here and the people that come to visit. Today's guest is a cool person doing cool things at the tip of the spear for all those things I just mentioned. Brandon Sehlhorst, the Chief Growth Officer for the City of Toledo. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Brandon, we talk about brain gain and brain retain. You are a brain regain. You grew up in Toledo, left for a bit. You're back here. Tell us a little bit about that journey and specifically what brought you back to Toledo.
Yeah, my journey I think is really unique in the sense that the reason why I'm back here is because I feel very strongly that I'm here on purpose for a purpose. And my story really starts, my parents had me at a very young age. My mom was 16, my dad was 17. We kind of had an underdog story growing up, and so a part of that has always kind of been instilled in me to kind of fight against the odds, and I think that was instilled in me at a young age. Growing up in Toledo, I remember, it was a tough time. I mean, Jeep was threatening to leave. Companies were locating outside of downtown. Southwyck Mall was closing, Northtown Mall, the foreclosure crisis, '08. I mean, there was just kind of a heavy time in Toledo. But for some reason, at a young age, I got very connected to what was happening in this city. There were bright spots, of course. The Mud Hens moving downtown. We built a new arena. Larry Dillon brought Levis Commons out of the ground and had big plans for the Marina District in Southwyck. And at a very young age, Vince, I got very interested in these things and connected. It also helped that my favorite game growing up was SimCity, which, explains a lot of my planning background and why I focused in that. But when it came time for me to pick my degree program to go to college, I found this degree program at the University of Cincinnati called Urban Planning. And urban planning really allowed me to combine all of these different interests, from political science to business to planning to real estate, into one degree. And at the time when I went to Cincinnati was experiencing its urban renaissance. So the race riots had just happened, and Over the Rhine was ranked the #1 most dangerous neighborhood in the United States. At the same time, you have these industry titans in Cincinnati, Procter & Gamble, Kroger, Macy's, Western and Southern, big Fortune 500 companies that are looked at each other and said, if we want to retain or regain talent to our organization, then we've got to figure this out, right? We can't be the headline of being the most dangerous neighborhood or be on the front page of the news for these race riots. And so they came together and created an organization called 3CDC, the Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation, where they channeled, along with the city and the county, a lot of funding through this organization to redevelop key sites in downtown Cincinnati, the Banks, Fountain Square, and Over the Rhine. And why I say all that is because I got to be a student of that when I was down at Cincinnati. I got to really understand how the private sector taking the lead on key initiatives like that and government playing a support role really led to the renaissance that they're experiencing today. Today, Cincinnati's, Over the Rhine is kind of hailed as like one of the best examples in the country of how to do a major redevelopment project for a neighborhood. So anyway, long story short, I got to be a student of that in Cincinnati. I did a number of different co-ops with businesses down there that were working on that effort. But as I was loving the work and absolutely loved Cincinnati, I spent 10 years of my life down there. It's not why I got into what I was doing. I wasn't passionate about the place. I always got into what I was doing knowing that I was going to come home and do exactly what I'm doing today. Now, did I think that I was going to do it at this young of an age? No, but God had a plan, and there's a reason why I'm here. Like I said, I believe strongly I'm here on purpose for a purpose. Toledo's underdog mentality, the challenges that we face, get me excited. It energizes me in some, unique way. I really, truly believe in the potential of this place. I'm raising my family in this place. I'm here, like I said, on purpose for a purpose. So.
Wow, that's a great origin story. The two words I pulled out of that were the purpose and the passion.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're welcoming you back with open arms from down 75. You took your SimCity experience, worked in one city down there. Now you're back to Toledo.
That's right.
You recently got promoted to the title of Chief Growth Officer.
Yes.
We could make some assumptions on what that means, but if you could tell us a little bit more in detail what your responsibilities are, who you report to, who reports to you, and who you're interacting with through the week and your responsibilities.
So the mayor just got reelected. This is his third and final term. And as a part of this third and final term, we are going through a restructuring, all revolving around a new strategic plan, which will be unveiled at the mayor's State of the City coming up in April. That State of the City has one North Star. It has one real mission, which is growth. And it's increasing our population. The mayor's bold goal is for 300,000 people to live inside the city by 2040. And so every decision that we are making at the city is aligned with that goal and the strategic priorities underneath it. So as we kind of reprioritize how we're spending funding, making policy decisions, everything, there was a desire to kind of reorganize the city structure so that we were most efficient in making those decisions. So previously, for example, under my role, I served as Director of Economic Development. There was a Director of the Plan Commission and a Director of the Building Inspection. Those are all three very important departments that oversee or have some role in the growth of our city, right? If you want to build in this city, you're going to work with the Plan Commission and Building Inspection, and sometimes interact with economic development. So the thought here around creating this Chief Growth Officer position is that this position really is leading the city's growth strategy, growth in residents and growth in businesses, growth in our income tax, growth in the wealth of our residents here. All of that kind of encompassed in the Chief Growth Officer role that now oversees Plan Commission and Building Inspection. And so that there's other chiefs that kind of oversee other departments to kind of streamline those functions. But that is the goal ultimately of kind of reorganizing the city so that we're most efficient and aligned around the strategic plan for the next 4 years.
Hey folks, thank you for checking out the podcast. We're going to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors because around here in Northwest Ohio, we believe in hard work. But we also know work shouldn't be harder than it has to be. Let me tell you about a local AI consulting and implementation team, Actual Reality Technologies. If you're a business owner who hates spending nights and weekends buried in spreadsheets, reports, and paperwork that should already be done, or if your people are stuck doing the same repetitive tasks over and over instead of focusing on the work that actually moves the business forward, that's where Actual Reality Technologies comes in. They build smart systems that automate your processes, monitor your operations, and surface answers without adding more work to your team. And they're doing it right here in Toledo, building technology in and for Northwest Ohio, helping local businesses run safer, smoother, and smarter. So if you've got processes you want to automate, the problems you need solved, give them a call. Actual Reality Technologies, helping our community work smarter. You can hit them up at www.actualreality.tech. Let's get back to the Make It Happen podcast.
So report to the mayor. How big is your team of people that work with you?
On the economic development team, we have a total of 7 people, which we are lean and mighty as it relates to that. When I worked in Cincinnati, I worked for the department of Cincinnati's Economic Development Department. The city of Cincinnati population is actually not that different from the city of Toledo. They got just a little, I think, around 300,000 people. We're at about 276 population inside the city of Toledo. Now, the region is much bigger, right? Cincinnati is a region, but the city proper, when you put it 275 to 300, I mean, it's not that different. Their economic development department had 35 people in it. So they had a whole business retention and expansion division, small business, major projects division, etc. We do that with 6 people for a city about the same size. So we are very intentional about the positions that we have. We do a lot of work, as you guys can see in the evidence of the projects that we've been able to accomplish here in the city, but we do it with a very small team. Yeah.
Okay. That speaks to a tremendous return on investment
Sure.
of tax dollars and investment. So I hope everybody's getting that message that everybody rages on about government, but this sounds like a very tactical and successful
Yes.
arena. Within that role and with your team, could you share what you think your biggest accomplishments have been to date in your roles with the city? And you touched on some of the goals, but defining those with what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look back at everything that we as a community have been able to accomplish, the city does not work alone. And I think one of the reasons why I was drawn back to Toledo, I mean, I knew I always wanted to be here and do the work that I'm doing, but I didn't know when it was going to be time. And for me, back in 2014, when ProMedica announced that they were moving all of their headquarter operations downtown Toledo and establishing this 22nd Century Committee, I remember looking at my girlfriend of the time, wife now, and I said, this is it. I said, this is the moment where Toledo starts to change, starts to evolve. Its urban renaissance starts to really happen in a meaningful way. And the reason why I knew that is because I was a student of it when it happened in Cincinnati. I saw when Procter & Gamble and Kroger and Macy's all got together and said, this is not okay. We're going to change the trajectory of this place. And they did. And so in 2014, I remember, saying this is when it happens. And I got to watch it happen for a few years until I moved back in 2017. But I think some of the biggest wins that we've had as a community have been when the city, the county, the private sector, the foundations, have all aligned to accomplish certain goals. Glass City Riverwalk, all of the investment that we've seen downtown to date, key improvements and things like Summit Street and key projects like Fort Industry Square and redoing Promenade Park. These are big things. The Jefferson Center, I mean, it's a great end to the story that we have of it today. But again, that was a key relationship that we had a number of different partners that were driving this need for this building in this larger district, which we're getting ready to invest $60 million as a result of that kind of partnership and that leadership that we saw in the private sector space. And so when I think about what I'm most proud of, it's those things that we've had alignment on from the private side, the foundational side, and the government side, where we've all rowed in the same direction and had those key priorities. Personally, we've had big wins at the city as it relates to some of the properties that we own, or owned rather. So when I started in 2017, I remember we owned Southwyck Mall at the time, Northtown, we owned Textile Leather, we owned all these sites, and maybe no surprise to the people listening, there wasn't really a plan. There wasn't a plan when I stepped into that role in 2017. There was barely a for sale sign on the Southwyck Mall property. And these properties were in a state of transition, right? They were all former commercial properties. For the example of Southwyck, the retailers had gone to Spring Meadows and the restaurants had went to Arrowhead Business Park. It was not a retail situation anymore. Same thing with Northtown. And so we had to look at it differently. And, growing up, that was my mall. So it was hard for me to somewhat look at it differently because it was where I went, and had memories. I have a t-shirt today that still says Southwyck Mall on it. So, I mean, we are very passionate about our places in this community. Anyway, long story short, some of the proudest things that I have on the city side of projects that we've kind of spearheaded are creating these shovel-ready opportunities and getting properties of that size ready for new development and thinking about what uses go there that can attract new economic development opportunities. And so when we started to look at Southwyck differently, it became very clear Ohio Turnpike, one of the only exits in Toledo, Northwest Ohio, is right down the street. You've got a UPS operation right there in Maumee. FedEx obviously had a big operation down the road on Reynolds. This is a great logistics and distribution site. And we had seen some case studies of Amazon repurposing former mall sites across the country. And so we said, well, why not start to think about this as a potential for a fulfillment center? These fulfillment centers have thousands of jobs. Again, in Ohio, and this is very important to our economic development strategy, in Ohio, cities are funded primarily on income tax. Now, that's not normal for the rest of the country. Most of the country, local governments are funded based on property tax and sales tax, but ours is on income tax. And so when we think about our economic development strategy from the city's perspective, it's about attracting jobs and high-paying jobs into the city, because that brings in most of our revenue, which then we can use to obviously provide basic services to our residents. So for us, having a 58-acre site in South Toledo next to the Ohio Turnpike, it made us start to think, how can we leverage this property to not only create new momentum for Reynolds Road, but also attract new jobs, to the city. And so we were actually, and this isn't widely known, and that's okay, we were one of the sites that Amazon was considering for the original fulfillment center that went to Rossford. The Southwyck is the shape of Southwyck. If you look at it on a map, and I encourage you to do it after this, it looks like a skull, okay? Because it's got that like ring road around it, the Reynolds Road. Then you've got like two outlots of what used to be Key Bank and what is now the Sheetz gas station in McDonald's. So it really does look like a skull. It was very hard for them from an access standpoint to get the amount of truck traffic into that site. So they passed on that site, which honestly was a blessing looking back on it, just because the amount of truck traffic that would have went there would have been very challenging with the surrounding neighborhood. But they came back to us and said, hey, this might be a good fit for what we call our delivery station. Still 400 jobs, good paying jobs. There's going to be a lot of activity here, but it's not the amount of truck traffic that you all were originally concerned about. And so ultimately we attracted that fulfillment center operation there. So anyway, that's an example. The same thing kind of happened with Northtown. We started to look at it differently, proactively rezoned it, got it ready, had a desire of what we wanted to see there, and we're intentional about going out there and getting it. So we've been very successful in getting sites ready for new projects and new development. That now we're out of sites, Vince. That's our next big thing. So,
Well, thank you for all that work you did. And a couple things I took from that is there wasn't a plan before you put that plan together.
Yes.
You had a vision of how these sites could be utilized, specifically Southwyck,
Correct.
which was a major change there. Would you consider your role or your team's role, are you almost salespeople for these opportunities? Are you reaching out, or do you collaborate with other organizations to help bring those type of...
Collaboration's always a part of what we do. I mean, we rely on our partners at the Regional Growth Partnership, Port Authority, Chamber. I mean, we are all marketing our community constantly. What we see our role is we, in that case, we owned the property, right? So like there are things that we can do when it comes to business investment, whether you're a startup, big business, there's 3 barriers to investment: speed, risk, and money. Speed. How quickly can we have a business go from spending money to making money, right? So that speed to market is huge. Risk. What are the risks to a business with doing this? On the case of Southwyck, a risk would have been that they had to rezone that property from commercial to industrial. So to remove that risk for any potential client, the city just proactively rezoned it. And then money. Often there's challenges. We have brownfield sites in this community, for example. There's more cost sometimes with our sites, just given their history, that can make there a money issue. So I would say that we see our role at the city is helping overcome those barriers for investment and job creation in our city. And there's things within our control, speeding up our permitting process. If we own the property, there's things that we can do to make it more attractive and easily able to be developed. But yes, 100% we rely a lot on collaboration. No entity does this alone.
Brandon Sehlhorst, Chief Growth Officer for the City of Toledo. Brandon, you had mentioned in an op-ed you had with The Blade the word alignment. You've talked about it here today, and our organizations pulling together to make a difference. There's been some big news about this $20 million shovel-ready fund.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that there's not a lot of sites with that. Can you explain what that shovel-ready fund of the $20 million, where that can go to, who can utilize it, and how that alignment is going to be so important?
Sure. Well, let me just step back for a second and just give a little context. So as I mentioned, the city actually for the past 20 years has acquired properties, proactively redeveloped them, and got them ready for new uses. Southwyck Mall, the Northtown Mall, the Marina District, actually, where the sports arena is, where our crown jewel of our riverfront is today, the Glass City Metro Park. That is a property that the city purchased, cleaned up, and got ready. We built a road with the most amount of lights of any road in Northwest Ohio, if you remember that, Vince. But we got that property ready for redevelopment. And so we've been successful, right, in redeveloping those sites for new uses, new housing. The Marina District is now the home of the city's largest residential project, the Marina Lofts, that we've seen in decades, 360 units there. Northtown is a completely occupied industrial park, or will be here soon, and Southwyck obviously is as well. We are out of sites, and as I mentioned, as a city that relies primarily on income tax to grow its revenue, we need more shovel-ready sites in order to grow our revenue and to accomplish what our community wants, which is attracting high-paying jobs, having new housing, having new quality of life amenities like the Glass City Riverwalk project. So those are examples of how the city has proactively stepped up. But if we look at what's happened downtown in particular over the past few years, ProMedica really acted as that entity that was going out proactively buying properties, matching them up with developers, and bringing in new uses. The Marina District, they purchased from Dashing Pacific. They brought the Metro Parks in and brought Frank Cass in, and voila, we have, the development that is over there today. For Industry Square is another example. A lot of the properties along their riverfront headquarters over there, the Jefferson Center. These are all examples of how our anchor institution stepped up in a big way to proactively acquire these things and get them ready for new development. ProMedica's not in a position to do that anymore. And let's be honest, they never were long-term. I think their goal was to, spark this development, and ultimately it would take over. But without that dedicated partner or funding stream to do this, we are at a disadvantage. Our community is investing $250 million to develop the country's best Riverwalk project. And we've got a lot of properties right next to the Riverwalk, for example, that could be redeveloped into a high-quality mixed-use development. But there's a risk there because no one owns them. No public entity or no partner owns them that has the mission of the community at hand. And so we see things like what's happening on Summit Street today, which is the property, one of the biggest properties along Summit Street, was purchased by an out-of-town investor and is now being developed as a self-storage facility. I mean, when I go to other river walks and, I don't see big self-storage facilities next to them. I see, really dynamic developments. And so in Toledo, we have to be intentional about what we want, and we have to go out and get it. It doesn't just always happen by itself. We have to be intentional. And so the idea behind the Shovel Ready Sites Fund is completely about intentionality and alignment to make sure that we get the type of development that we want to see in this community, not only along the Riverwalk, but in all areas of our city. And the only way to do that is to have a dedicated funding stream to be able to proactively go out and buy properties and get them ready for new development. And so we created what's called the Toledo Community Improvement Corporation, which, think of it like a subsidiary of the city. It's still a public agency. I serve as the executive director. The mayor and council appoint and sit on the board of this organization. They are, this is a public agency, but it's technically a separate 501c3 from the city. And so what we are doing with this is we have had an agreement with the city of Rossford. So back in 1990, we had this agreement where they annexed the part of Perrysburg Township that is where Bass Pro is today. And in exchange for doing that, we extended the water out to there. And we created a joint economic development zone, which essentially means that we collect, as the city of Toledo, income tax from that area. of Rossford in exchange for that water agreement. Fast forward to today, there's been more development that has happened out there. Rossford has been challenged from a fire and EMS standpoint to serve the size of the buildings out there. And so we came to the table to renegotiate with them to allow for a certain portion of that funding that we would get off of that to come off the top to specifically go to do fire and EMS in the JED. Rising tide lifts all boats, right? We want that area to be successful, so we're willing to help invest in it. We also extended that agreement for an additional 35 years as a result of that. And what we are doing is we are channeling all of that money that the city gets from this Rossford agreement into the Toledo Community Improvement Corporation for the next 35 years. It's about $1.2 million that we get every year from this JED agreement. And again, we extended it for an additional 35 years. What we're doing right now is on council's agenda to be approved on March 17th, is that we are going to bond that revenue stream for 30 years. Since we have this for the next 35, we're going to bond this, and we're going to get $20 million this year to seed our shovel-ready sites fund so that we can go out and do the work that's needed to be done in this community to get sites ready to attract the development and the jobs that we're intentional about trying to attract. So hopefully that is a long story of how we got there. It's a very creative way to fund this operation. It's a budget neutral situation for the city of Toledo's budget, so there's no impact to the city's budget, which we think makes this a really unique opportunity, moment in time to use this funding for this purpose.
Well, the alignment in that story with another whole other community.
Well, yeah,
you're helping them a lot, but it's coming back and helping us,
right,
and enhancing the whole region, but getting that money to make things happen
right
along the riverfront,
sure,
other properties to get the developers to come in,
yeah,
the companies that do the renovations
yes,
and the builds, bringing those people into the offices. Looking at that and going back to where you talked about high income, high paying jobs, that's the tax base we're looking to bring in.
Right.
Your op-ed spurred on another op-ed and a lot of discussion in the community. Darren Moore has put this 24-second clock shot on as an example of what Toledo needs to be doing. It seems like the play has been written up. You've got this $20 million and things that are going to happen. Another gentleman, Tom Bush, a local entrepreneur who started up an artificial intelligence agency and looked at what tech is in the area and really believes that's where the growth needs to come from. Is there any specific things that you're doing or that you see or partnerships that would help facilitate venture capital funding, bringing in tech startups, bringing in tech companies that have gotten some funding that are ready to grow, to fill up buildings, to develop these sites?
Yeah. My op-ed was really to call for alignment. We've seen what alignment has done and all the examples that I referenced in my op-ed. We've seen the progress that's happened in this community over the past 10 years when you've got, again, government, private sector, foundational, all rowing in the same direction. And the Shovel Ready Sites Fund is a piece of this, but it's not everything, right? There's so much work that needs to be done across all of these different sectors. I'll give you an example. What I like to say is a strong community is like having a three-legged stool, and you need all three legs to be strong at the same time for you to be competitive. Economic development. You need to have the high-paying jobs, right? You need to have the income, the wealth-building opportunities for people. That's one leg of the stool. Second leg is workforce development. If you don't have the people, the skilled people to work in those jobs, we're never going to be able to start up, scale up, or attract those companies. And then finally, the third leg of the stool is community development. We need to have a community that people want to live in, right? And so that's a strong downtown. That's safe and dynamic neighborhoods. That's a good school system. It's things like Party in the Park and exciting events that make our culture kind of come alive here in the city. And so there's so many different things that we need to be doing at the same time, right? And all three of those stools to make this all work. And so the one piece of this that we've not been very strong in, and it's no secret, is the tech space. And we were obviously very excited about the opportunity for Bitwise and the Innovation District we as the city came alongside our partners, to launch this innovation district. We're getting ready, as I mentioned, to invest $60 million in the Uptown neighborhood in the name of Innovation District around the Jefferson Center, to kind of play our part in this. But in every instance, we are a supporting role in this. Government, I think, leads when it needs to, but it's best when we are supporting what the private sector, what the companies, the foundations are calling for. And so I see that as our role primarily in supporting these efforts. We've been challenged, things dating back as far as Rocket Ventures to, Jumpstart in this community. We've never really been able to establish the infrastructure that's needed to support that tech ecosystem, within this community. You go to other communities, there's incubators, accelerators, venture capital, there's this whole infrastructure at play. We, in my opinion, don't have that organization or don't have that person or people that wake up every day that are specifically focused on building that infrastructure out as an entity. We've got a lot of people that are passionate about doing it and that are doing it along the sides, but I think it takes a dedicated team of people. It takes alignment on government, private, foundation, so that we can fund that infrastructure appropriately, so that there's that kind of from ideation all the way to hopefully scale up, right? There's that built out. So those companies don't have to leave our community for venture capital, which I think is a big challenge that we have when we do have a company that is able to be scaled. So I think we need alignment in that space. I really do. I think that there's a strong desire from the city to be a partner in that. But I think it takes a lot of people around the table all getting aligned on what we actually need to focus on in that space so that we can build it out and sustain it, right? Because we've had a lot of starts, but they've all stopped. You know what I mean? And so we need to build out and have intentionality in that space.
You'd mentioned having a leader. It sounds like the ideas are out there, the opportunities are out there, the initiative, the desire is all out there, but there isn't somebody at the lead of it. Could you see that being a part of your team? Does there need to be somebody in the city from a governmental standpoint, or do you see one of the other organizations you work with having some sort of chief innovation officer to lead that? Is it a separate entity? Do you have any vision on how that leadership would come in?
Yeah, I guess, when I go to other communities, you don't see necessarily the public side leading this effort. It's, I go to other communities, Spark in Ann Arbor, Centrifuge down in Cincy. They are organizations that have maybe been supported by government funding, but they're really led and partnered with the private sector. And I think that's, or universities play a strong role in that. And so I think that's where, Vince, that there's a lot of partners in the space to make this happen. If government should not lead this space, it should support this space. And I think, I think that's ultimately our role, but we're willing to lead, to kind of convene if we need to, so that we can do this, because this is so important. I mean, Darren is absolutely right. We need to be focused on and doing this. It's important work for the future of our community. I think that there's some level of exhaustion, I think, to some extent, with the amount of different times that things like Rocket Ventures, things like Jumpstart, things like Bitwise, have come in this community and ultimately failed. And so I think you need someone that can really, help establish this whole infrastructure that needs to be put in place for these companies. That's what I really think.
And that falls in line with, as you mentioned, Darren was highlighting, Tom has talked about.
Yeah.
He's a leader in a sense, but he's trying to build a business and doesn't have the time to put in as much as he would like.
Yeah.
So it sounds like private sector, get that leadership going. There's been the fits and starts in the past, learn from what hasn't worked, but put something together, and the city and these other organizations would align to help.
I think we all do it together. I think we're all around. I think we should all be around the table trying to figure out how to do this together. When you go to other communities, like I mentioned, Spark in Ann Arbor, Centrifuge, you really do have all of those entities kind of working together to make sure that is successful at the end of the day. So I think we have to get aligned on what the priorities are, where we should start and focus the funding. Because there needs to be, I feel strongly, there needs to be someone that wakes up every day, like there is in those other communities, that is focused on building this out, not as a side job, as a full-time job, and that understands the space well enough that can truly help these companies, these tech-related companies, start up and scale up. And I think that that's something that maybe we've not been strong in. We've never had, it doesn't feel like we've had that strong leader in that space where that has history of maybe starting up or scaling up their own tech company, that is leading the charge of, this incubator, accelerator, or venture capital network. And then ultimately there's that side of it, but then it's also connecting these businesses and these entrepreneurs with customers. That's what it's all about, right? I mean, everyone's got an idea. Is it a good idea? And is it is it able to be, acquired eventually or used by a company? I mean, we've got a lot of great corporations in this city that I'm sure have a lot of IP sitting on the shelf. Like, is there an opportunity for an entrepreneur to maybe take that IP and develop it out? And then you might have a customer in one of our corporations. That's the type of work that I think that needs to be done, but it's not government. I think that leads that work, but we certainly play a strong role in it and we support it.
Okay. And that's some talk I've heard. I know one gentleman that would be very interested in taking on a role like that. So I'll have to forward his resume to you to see if that would fit, and we'll find some funding for him. To close things out here, Brandon, 2 questions. First off, if you had a magic wand or you could make anything happen starting next week, what would be the most dynamic or game-changing thing that you'd like to see happen, or you would have the power to make happen to really get that flywheel spinning faster?
We need more resources in this space. I mentioned, my economic development department is 6, 7, 8 people. You know what I mean? The county luckily established their own economic development department. There's, compared to my experience in Cincinnati, there's not a lot of people waking up and focused on this that get paid to do it as a full-time job. I think ProMedica, for example, when they were in this space, they had people within their corporation that they were paying to do things like party in the park or focus on redeveloping, the Jefferson Center and doing all these things. And so I think that we need to all be aligned on what the priorities are, so we're all rowing in the same direction, and we need more people in this space doing the day-to-day work that needs to be done. I think that I feel very strongly that is what needs to happen in order for us to be successful.
Sounds like another great vision and plan, which
and totally doable, right?
Yes,
that's not wishing for gazillion dollars to fall from the sky, but it's totally doable.
Well, and that's why we're having the discussions. It's like, let's talk about what needs to be done. We're kind of doing a virtual table. Hopefully, we can get everybody to a real table together. Brandon, we've thrown the softballs at you today. Now, the Make It Happen has a tradition of asking a real tough question at the end.
Okay.
One day, you're bringing somebody into Toledo. You've got to take them to breakfast, to lunch, and to dinner, and to do something in town. What are you doing with that person?
Is this a prospective business that we're
taking? It could be a prospective business. It could be a relative that's going to visit once.
Sure.
It could be anybody, but they've only going to have one day in Toledo in their life.
Sure.
For breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe an activity.
Perfect. Well, one of our favorite things to do is get brunch. So we love to get brunch at Toll House. So we would definitely show them Toll House. I think Toll House is in an area of town where there's just a lot of stuff that's going to be happening soon. A lot of stuff that's already happening with the Toledo Pickle. So me, the SimCity guy, the planner. I like to take people and show them where we're working. So I'd love, Toll House has got an excellent breakfast. We love. We'd obviously take them to our Metro Park. The view of the skyline there is absolutely incredible. One of my favorite things to do with my family is to just get lost in the Metro Park and spend the day there. Glass City is certainly one of our favorites. but we love Oak openings too. And so we'd probably take them to go see and spend the night in the Treehouse Village, because it's truly a unique experience, something that not every region offers as well. And then for dinner, one of our favorite places to go is Souk. We love Souk downtown. We'd take them, show them that experience, and their wine selection there is really great next door at Sibira. So yeah. Great, tough question.
Okay, well, you did cheat a little bit there with the brunch thing. I'll let
We're not
go.
big breakfast people, so we like to combine them both.
So I'm going to sneak in one last question. This might have to get edited out. I've been hearing some rumors about a soccer stadium on the river. Any truth to that? Anything you can share? Inside scoop?
I hear that there was an application submitted to the state for some funding for a soccer stadium. That's all I know, Vince. That's all I can share.
Okay, well, you heard it here first that there's a piece of paper floating around out there for that. Brandon, thank you very much for all you've already done for Toledo and all I know you will do. Working phenomenally well, a small team doing great big things. You are making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Have a great day, everybody.